If you're not watching your own stations, maybe you need to, because if you think I have something new and unique as to why we're taking these proactive steps, I don't. I am just committed as a leader in this community to identify issues of concern and to be on the front end of it so that we don't see a problem versus being reactionary and trying to protect people after the fact who are already facing harm or facing threats. So my actions were to send a communication out to my organization saying, hey, you will not be permitted personal time off during the week of the primary or the week of the general election to ensure that we have enough staffing to meet whatever demand there may be. It's twofold. It's to the benefit of the community to make sure that we can provide enough support necessary should an issue occur. It's also for the protection of my employees. No worse scenario than to be out there trying to address something when it comes to a threat against the public and not have someone standing next to you to take on that threat. So it is about ensuring if there is a problem that we are properly staffed to address it. Not because we expect or know that there will, but because it is the responsible leadership step. The other aspect is just being comprehensive and working with the recorder's office, the county attorney's office, and any of our colleagues in other municipalities that we are versed in the laws as it relates to election issues, potential crimes thereof, and that we better understand our authority as it relates to where is our authority lie and where does it stop, and where does my colleague's authority lie in protecting elections, because they are two sole and separate lanes that run parallel. So we're making sure that our employees are versed in these elements and that we provide protection appropriately and investigate crimes accordingly. There will be a mix, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but as in past elections, we are just being more robust in this election to ensure that there are plainclothes deputies who will be surveying areas that are polling sites to make sure that there are no issues that we believe could conflict with someone's right to vote peacefully. Should there be an escalation, we'll work with that municipality and determine if, in fact, it can be de-escalated by employees that work on behalf of the recorder, whether it is employee or volunteer. If they can manage the situation themselves and de-escalate it, that's perfect. If not, law enforcement will act when it's deemed that we need to, and that will be determined whether it is plainclothes deputy, try to keep a low profile, or if we have to call in uniformed officers or deputies to act on an issue of concern. There's a lot of folks involved in this. It is not just employees of Maricopa County, whether it's the Sheriff's Office, Recorder's Office. There are volunteers from all over our county that represent both parties, represent community, and they believe in working on behalf of their communities to ensure that elections are run thoroughly, safely, efficiently, and honestly. That's what this is all about. So I came here to speak with you, and all my colleagues speak with you also. I'll answer a few questions, but at the end of the day, there is nothing overwhelming that has provoked some decision on my behalf other than being a thoughtful leader on an issue of concern where we have seen an escalation of violence in our nation in the past election cycle, and we hear what is irresponsible vitriol from different people who can be in different forms of leadership. Some are candidates, some are elected officials, some are just political strategists or activists or whatever you want to term them to be. But words matter. And when you say things that cause people to believe that they can't trust in a system that is trustworthy, then people act emotionally, and emotions lead to bad judgment and bad behavior. My hope is that you realize we're serious about this and we're going to be zero tolerance. We're going to protect democracy and make sure that people can vote safely. And if you act accordingly, then that's wonderful. But if you act in conflict with the law, then we will respond and address it appropriately. So with that, I will turn it over to the recorder.
Okay. I'll be brief because I am largely the beneficiary of Sheriff Penzone's and the office's mindfulness in accomplishing the same goal that we all want to accomplish, which is safe, secure, transparent, and fair elections. Sheriff Penzone touched on democracy, and I think that if we look at the history of the world, and if we look around the world today, we should pretty easily tell that democracy is not the default setting. It doesn't just happen because we set up a form of government. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work from a lot of partners, and we're lucky that we have such a fantastic partner in the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. But in addition to that, while they're leading many of these efforts, we're also benefiting from local police departments, state departments, Tim Romer at the Arizona Department of Homeland Security, as well as our federal partners. And so really, we are trying to do this in a professional manner, in a manner that doesn't interfere with anyone's ability to cast a vote, but at the same time ensures that everyone who wants to cast a ballot and everyone who wants to participate in this election by working this election is safe, such that we can continue this democratic legacy of our wonderful country and wonderful state. And so it's my great privilege to be part of that. And I'm just again grateful for Sheriff Penzone and our other local law enforcement partners.
It's your time. What can we answer for you that's within reason and not outside the scope of might undermine our efforts? Joe?
Stephen, we have a major gubernatorial candidate in Kari Lake who has demonstrated she doesn't understand how elections work, and she has worse endorsed dangerous, false conspiracies about elections. Have you attempted to communicate with her to help her resolve concerns she has, and how concerned are you that someone in her position with her influence could cause civil unrest or worse after the election?
Well, as Sheriff Penzone said, words matter, and I think that somebody of prominence, their words matter especially. Our goal is, no matter where you were in terms of confidence in the election, 2 days ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, is to help you feel better about our election process. So we will work with anyone who has communicated with us, whether that's quite frankly a simple tweet or an email or a phone call to our office. We want to show you how this process works. We believe in this process. We know that this process is tested. We know that this process is the result of bipartisan Arizonans working together in groups of up to 3,000 temporary workers for this election cycle. So we have not heard from Ms. Lake directly, but I have heard from her campaign. In fact, I got a lovely message just this morning because I was able to help out one of her campaign officials, one of her staff members, with questions they had about getting people to the poll. And I would encourage all candidates to, at this point, realize that we want the same thing, and that's that we want our voters, all of our voters, to feel like they can participate in this process.
Do you have a message for Ms. Lake today?
Did you have any message?
If you want to learn, we're here, and we're going to continue to share accurate information about elections.
I want to touch on something real quick, and I apologize for the question. We're trying to be as helpful as possible also, and I think this somewhat, aligns with your question, Joe. At the polling sites, there are going to be markers that say, how close you can be within that space and promote for your candidate or whatever it may be. There's going to be information readily available to make sure that you understand what the laws are so that you don't unwittingly violate the laws. Some aspects of it are just being responsible. And I'm going to refer to something that's more on a personal scale, but I remember when my early election, speaking with someone who said to me, Paul, this is going to be an ugly campaign. They're going to throw mud at you. They're going to say things that are untruthful. You're going to have to get in the mud with them if you want to win this race. And I said, I disagree. I believe that we can rise above that and represent the best values of our nation and of democracy and still see a successful outcome. And the person said to me, you're naive. That's not politics. And my response was, I disagree with you. We define what politics is. It doesn't define us. Democracy is defined. But how we behave in the political spectrum, we influence what we see politics as, and we influence what we're going to be in politics. So the question becomes, who do we want to be as a community, as a society, as a nation? Do we want to be responsible, seeking solutions and promoting safe, healthy elections, or do we want to be divisive and spew words that create emotion that then leads to acts that are potentially violent or criminal? We're all going to be responsible for actions, whether they're words or behaviors. There are laws in place specifically for those reasons. I hope that everyone in a position of leadership and power recognizes your responsibility and acts in a manner that our children, our children's children can be proud of. Let's start behaving as the nation we believe we are, as opposed to thinking that bad behavior has benefits if you're successful because of it. Go ahead.
I cover the Capitol, and Kelly Townsend, Senator Kelly Townsend, so flashy, exhorted her followers to say, go down there and you watch them and you follow them. address that situation, just how risky someone's civil rights.
There's a healthy way of being part of this process. And fortunately, many Arizonans in all three of our recognized political parties are already engaging in that. You can work. If you have misapprehensions about our elections, you can work in our elections. You can come be one of the 3,000 temporary workers. If you want to be part of a party's observation process, there are official trainings, there are official manners for you to become an observer either at one of the 211 voting locations or at our central tabulation facility. I, of course, 100% oppose anything that could be construed as deterring, intimidating somebody from lawfully casting his or her ballot. That's unlawful, and that type of behavior absolutely shouldn't be promoted.
Just to follow up too, for people who are going to be dropping their ballots off at your office there, what can they expect to see? What can they expect to see in terms of access? The last time I was down there, it was basically almost out on the street, it was on the sidewalk,
So-
the ballot box.
We have greatly increased the number of voting centers from 2020. We will have 211 voting centers in Maricopa County for the August primary. We'll have 230 approximately for the general election. These are all vote anywhere centers, meaning even if you live in Mesa, you can vote at one in Phoenix. And so we are really proud of the access that we've afforded. The MICTEC Tabulation Center, because we have so many cars there and so much activity going on related to the tabulation process, is not a voting location. However, there is a ballot drop box there, and you can go by that. That is under 24/7 video surveillance. It's picked up directly by bipartisan teams of 2. And like all green ballot affidavit envelopes, it has to first be scanned to make sure that that voter profile has not logged more than one ballot, and it has to be signature verified to confirm that it is in fact you. The only difference, and I'll repeat this because, well, I'll emphasize this because I believe that there has been some less than perfect information about the subject of ballot deposit boxes. The only difference between those and any USPS box is that you can drop it off up to 6:59 p.m. on election night, and it's picked up directly by bipartisan election teams rather than through the USPS. But the USPS is a reliable service, and of course you can track your ballot. But now I'm sort of getting off and like, yeah, no, I'll tell you all about these websites, but that's not really what we're here for, so we'll leave it at that. Hopefully that satisfies you.
And you can track it. Bottom line is you'll know that your vote will count because you're able to track it. Thank you.
Sheriff, I want to touch on the intimidation thing a little bit, because obviously we saw 2 years ago at the tabulation center, a lot of people armed with a variety of weapons there, and there's been this talk, as the county recorder just alluded to, about watching ballot drop boxes and monitoring and looking for this stuff. When you talk about educating your deputies on election laws, is there a line regarding intimidation that you've talked about, whether it be following, election workers in their cars? And then what else, if you can talk more generally about what you specifically educated on, what are kind of the 3 main topics that you want to hammer home?
Sure, we're actually working with the prosecutor's office, and our employees won't just be educated on what, the fundamental laws that they apply every day. If you talk about, an assault, a theft, things of that nature, fundamentally that's what they do every day, so there's a great familiarity. Election law is something that is uncommon for us to be this directly involved in. So we're not just going to educate them on the laws itself, we're going to educate them on our authority and the application of it. Certain areas of identifying anything that might fall into the lane of the recorder's office relative to a concern over election process that could lead to a criminal investigation, they would be the initiator of that. If we're going to engage with someone in the community, if it's as you're saying, an intimidation, we're going to be very clear up front defining what the parameter, the boundary would be. My hope is this isn't about bravado right now. My hope is that Arizona leads by example, and we have such a peaceful, thorough election day that there are no headaches. But if a person is doing something that is a cause for question, we're going to educate them first. We're going to try to work that out and de-escalate it. But if it rises to the point where they are intimidating someone or threatening them in a manner that undermines their freedom to vote and it reaches the level of a criminal act, then we'll act on it accordingly. But again, we want to work with the prosecutor's office to make sure that they're comfortable in our execution of this particular law because they're responsible to prosecute it.
Has Everyone getting, I mean, how did that, you have a lot of employees.
Yeah, so we have certain employees that are dedicated solely for monitoring the polls, and then we're gonna have folks that are gonna be working on those days that are going to be uniformed deputies, that'll get some training and education also. But situations like these are so unique, we're also gonna call on our supervisors to be actively involved to make sure they're overseeing any and all activities that could relate to a potential criminal act, whether it's a citation or an arrest. But again, my hope is de-escalation, my hope is a peaceful election, and my hope is that you help us in that effort, educate the community so they don't make these mistakes.
Can I ask, you know, 2 years ago, I was outside the tabulation center for multiple nights in a row, and obviously there were, you know, you had Alex Jones on a bullhorn, you had a lot of people chanting certain
A lot of
things.
name dropping going on today.
What would you, did you learn anything from 2 years ago, and would you have done things differently looking back on that?
Oh, to the contrary. I mean, I think you learn with every experience, and you can say you would have done things differently, but I'm extremely proud of this organization that in an unexpected, unpredictable, spontaneous combustion moment, the recorder was probably more in the crosshairs in a moment, so he can speak about, you know, the duress or emotions he felt, but I felt with all things considered, we did a pretty darn good job, and I'm proud of the men and women adjusting on the fly to address that. Now, we have that experience in the rearview mirror, and that's what we're trying to prepare for. Not being reactionary, but being proactive in that space. I think what I would ask of you is this. Last time we dedicated a free speech zone, and we dedicated an area for the media. And we tried to make it so readily accessible that you could still cover your story without going into that space, and no disrespect intended, but somewhat allowing for what is a provocative moment. You know, you put the light and the camera on, and suddenly you have somebody who, to them, that's their moment to shine. We would much rather see you in a safe space and allow for that to take place where it is that we can keep you safe. If you choose to go into that space, it's a free nation. You can do what you want to, but it makes it a lot more difficult for my deputies to go in there and extract you from an area where someone may have the right to bear arms and be in a place where they're emotionally stimulated, and suddenly they see you as conflict. They see you as somebody that they deem to be a potential challenge. I know you're chomping at the bit for another, but I'm going to go to some of your colleagues here, so it's not just me and you doing an exclusive. Who else would like to ask a question?
Sheriff, can you say first off how many people are going to be devoted specifically on primary and general election day?
Yes, the exact number is a lot.
Can you say, I mean, a percentage of your department? 80%? I mean, you said
No, it's not, listen, we're still responsible to keep the community at large safe, but we are going to determine what resources we need first and foremost, and what are going to be supplemental resources that we want to have standing by should there be a problem. But my hope is all quiet.
Obviously, it sounds like there hasn't been a specific threat on any polling location or anything like that. If one were to arise, how would you handle that at that location? Would you shut it down?
No, we're not going to interfere. We're going to do the best we can to de-escalate, to remove a potential threat or danger that you know, is criminal in nature, because we're not going to overstep our authority and violate someone's civil rights. And you know, speaking boisterously about someone that you believe in or something that you support is protected by the First Amendment. So that in of itself is not a violation. We are going to be consummate professionals in a space that I hope is peaceful, but if it's challenging, we're going to still make sure that democracy is served and that this community is safe. And I know that's really like a canned answer, but I don't know what to tell you, because it's hypothetical. It's hard for me to go into that space and give you if circumstance A happens, we're going to respond with B. I just hope that you see two things. You see that last election, again, under duress and circumstances that were unpredictable, we performed pretty darn well. And in this election, we're going to be even more prepared, and we're taking steps that we're not going to discuss here that I think are going to be really important and effective. Let's take one or two more, and then we're going to wrap up, but thank you for the patience. Who hasn't asked a question yet that wants to, and then I'll let you close. I'm deferring to you to let you close if you'd like. All your colleagues they're like, he's our guy.
Is there any coordination with other sheriffs in other counties regarding election security?
I wouldn't say coordination, but there's constant communication, and there's definitely coordination with the municipalities, the local law enforcement agencies. And, you know, we have a common center that we work out of that we're going to coordinate everything when it comes to calls that are received and where they're directed to make sure that we're kind of one-stop shopping. One-stop shopping? I don't know what the correct term is. Anyway, we're coordinating everything to make sure that every issue that we deal with specific to polling sites, election, things of that nature, all come to one area, and that they're dispatched and managed from that space.
What are the probabilities something could happen as far as violence? And if that were to happen,
are you guys gonna be doing, arresting people? What are the consequences they could face legally? Are they just gonna, is it just gonna be a warning, or it comes down to the circumstances?
You know, what is the probability? I don't know. If I knew, if I could answer that for you, gosh, I think the Powerball's worth like 500 million or something today. I'd probably be rolling some numbers out.
You'd still be here though, right?
Yeah, of course. Our job is to manage the circumstances as they present themselves. Everybody that's in this room, everybody that is watching at home gets to make a decision on who they want to be on election day. Do they want to be someone who respects this nation and democracy and respects law enforcement, and that there's no reason for us to be engaged? Or do they want to be someone who knows what the line is and crosses that line and forces us to react to their behavior? Either way, we'll be consummate professionals and address it in that manner. It's just, I started off saying this, it's just, it's an interesting paradigm right here I never expected us to be in. We're capable of greatness, and we're also capable of horrible things. We've seen both many times in our lifetimes, and especially in the past few years. Elections matter. Democracy matters. But if you out there are the folks who love to say, I back the blue, or in this case the tan, I believe in law enforcement, then be respectful of the authority and act accordingly. Because I have seen people preach that and then club law enforcement professionals on the side of their head with flagpoles. Okay? Act accordingly, be respectful. Your rights will always be respected from this office, but this is an us issue. This is not a, you know, the sheriff's office needs to make sure that democracy works. The sheriff's office is a part of order in the process of freedom. Last one for you, young lady.
Any particular locations where you guys will be more concentrated on with security, and if so, which ones and why?
We'll be everywhere all the time, anywhere, anytime. We don't really want to narrow it. First and foremost, I'm not going to sit here and act as though we have enough bodies to be at every location in that capacity. We are going to pay attention. We're going to look at issues of concern. We're going to deploy where appropriate. But if you're at a polling site, you can pretty much work under the premise that there's probably a plainclothes deputy not too far away keeping an eye on things, so that you can come and go safely. Okay? Thank you guys so much for the time. We appreciate you. Any last words you want to end with? It's your show.
I appreciate it greatly.
All right. Thank you, everyone.